Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for your weekly DC Spotlight. This one's for November 22nd, 2022. Uh, Pretty decent sized week. 12 books, 10 books, somewhere around there to talk about. Rocky and I were chatting a little bit before we got started. And it's interesting. There's no books that are like, oh my God, that was so good. But there's also nothing like, oh, that was terrible. So it's kind of an even keel week. I don't know how I feel about that. Sometimes I want some books that are really great, but trade off. I didn't read anything that I was like, oh my god, that was just so bad. But yeah, so kind of a average week, I'd say. What
Well,
do you think,
I
Rocky?
do think I will make an argument that maybe one comic was bad, really bad, but not as bad as I was expecting it to be. But we'll get into it. But I would have. There's a number of. It's funny you said nothing's like exceptionally bad, except maybe one in my mind. But there's a whole pile of mediocrity. And even some of the ones I was hoping would be really good were not as good as I had hoped. So this was kind of a meh week overall, I think.
Yeah, I did sort of feel like some of the books that I really haven't been enjoying have had like some decent books, some different progression. Better than they have been. But when I'm really not enjoying them, and then an issue comes out, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't bad. I mean, it's progression, but it's not to say, oh, this was great. It just wasn't as bad as it has been, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and kick it off. Harley Quinn, number 24, Who Killed Harley, chapter 3, writer Stephanie Phillips, art by Matteo Loli, colors by Rain Barreto, letters by Anworld Design. I thought the art was solid. It's still interesting. I'm not sure what version of Harley this is, right? Like we saw how Kevin took her to a Lazarus pit, had her revived, and she got up and came back to life, was resurrected, and she seemed very maniacal, very evil, almost malevolent in that last page of that issue. And then last issue, she's got this Harley cult going on. It wasn't clear, is she returning to her villainous ways and what have you. So in this issue, she kidnaps Zaz for no other reason than he's Zaz and he's a bad guy, and so she's assuming she was killed by a bad guy. And if Zaz is a bad guy, he must know who did it. It doesn't make any sense, but that's Harley. Um, so
Yeah.
it's kind of strange. You don't know what to expect. So in a way, that's interesting from Stephanie Phillips because we have no idea. Harley clearly isn't herself. She seems more deranged, I think is the word that I would use. Um, and then the apparently her killer shows up at a crime scene where Harley takes Zaz. Zaz says, "Yeah, there might be, I may have heard something," and so she takes, at this particular spot, Ace Chemicals or some kind of something like that, this warehouse where a bunch of bodies were dumped, and not sure who's behind it. So Harley, she's got him. She's got Zaz all tied up. She bundles him up. She takes him over there. He's still there in the chair, tied up when and sees the guy in the rafters, and Harley's like not really paying attention to him. Why would he be there? And then yeah, lo and behold, here's this villain, the guy that killed her, and it's like, God, what why didn't you stay dead? Now I have to kill you all over again. And all we know is he has some metal claws, um, and he or she is wearing this robe, this tattered cloak, if you will, and Harley rips it off of her, and it looks like nothing more than the Batman Who Laughs, but a Harley version with these metal claws, or at least one of the hands is a
Yes.
metal claw. There's
The
chains
Harley who
around them.
laughs. How original.
Yeah. Uh, and at least it's not the full on spiked blindfold kind of thing, because I always think that just looks so dumb. The Batman Who Laughs, the Harley Who Laughs, I guess we're assuming, has diamond cutouts, and you can kind of see her red glowing eyes, but still has the spikes. Still looks dumb in my mind. The design is just terrible. I don't care for it, and I can't stand the Batman Who Laughs. I think he's a terrible character. So if this is the Harley Who Laughs from the Dark Multiverse, I guess I sure hope we don't end up getting a blank Who Laughs for every character that's an evil version, because I just don't like it. I'm gonna have to tell Scott Snyder that, why did you create this? Now look at all these derivative Wonder Woman Who Laughs, Green Lantern Who Laughs, Flash Who Laughs. Like, it's just no. And honestly, I have to say, a lot of my dislike comes from the visual design, which that's not Scott's fault. That's all Greg Capullo. But I just cannot stand the look of these characters. And that whole idea of mashing Batman up with the Joker, I don't care for it. So
Yeah.
obviously we'll find out more next issue about who this really is. But even if it is the Harley who laughs from the Dark Multiverse, why would she have it out for Harley other than just she's bad because she comes from the Dark Multiverse? I don't know. Seems a little problematic to me, but I guess we'll see how it all plays out as Stephanie Phillips is heading toward the end of her run. So, what
Yeah.
did you think of it?
Well, first, my favorite aspects of the issue were had to do with the art. Matteo Lolly on the art. I really liked the art. I thought it was really good. I found it. I actually really like this art. This artist can stay on for Harley. I really like it, and I actually I liked the fact that Victor Zsasz showed up. Although story wise, it didn't really make a lot of sense for Victor Zsasz to show up. It wasn't, even, but then it makes sense that Harley was maybe looking and going through her various asking around to various villains to try to find out who killed her, and she thought maybe Victor Zsasz would know, who killed me, what's the word out on the street. And the bulk of the issue is her basically interrogating Zsasz. I have to say I thought Victor Zsasz was a better fighter than this. I actually, again, it's a
Hey,
nitpick, but
remember Harley in Heroes in Crisis? Harley took on the
well,
Trinity and
yeah,
won,
she took, yeah, fair
or
enough, fair enough.
escaped,
So
battled him to stalemate,
yes,
if you
I,
will.
I guess Stephanie Phillips asked for advice from Tom King in terms of
Yeah,
what
exactly, exactly. So
how good is
ridiculous.
Harley as a fighter? Oh, she can take out the Trinity. Trust me,
Yeah.
the fans won't be upset at all. No, no big deal. It's only Zaz. But in any event, I thought that was. I think she's fighting out. Maybe a little bit higher than her skill level, but maybe not. Victor Zaz, just he's more into knives and what have you. But I thought that. Uh, I thought there were some nice scenes in here, nonetheless. With particularly my favorite page is with Harley with her two hyenas. I forget her hyenas' names, but it was a really. She looks menacing, and that's what I like about the picture with Harley with her two hyenas. She looks menacing here. They don't look. Finally, these hyenas look terrifying because they are terrifying. They're hyenas. Every time we see hyenas, they're always drawn to look like sort of like glorified, almost like Disney cartoon hyenas, you know what I mean? Like something you could see in The Lion King, I mean, it's just come on, like I want these things to look terrifying, and they do. And I continue to like this new visual Harley in terms of she looks visceral, she looks angry. And one of the things that I sort of I don't like in this issue is already Stephanie Phillips is pulling back from this being the crazy Harley, the crazy evil Harley. That this Harley is this is still, Harley is still got some really. She's still got the crazy zaniness in her. She hasn't really. There isn't enough of the exploration of Harley's dark side here, and I really don't like the fact that Harley's dark side is now going to be manifested by a Harley who laughs. I really wanted this to be a Harley returning more to a darker version of Harley. That's just me. It's my bias because I think we've had enough of the zany Harley for a while. But uh, people can differ on that. One of the good characters from the previous storyline, Perry, the alien parasite, shows up, and I like even Perry is terrifying here. This alien parasite is terrifying. Threatens Vaz to like suck his guts out and what have you. Uh, anyway, Zaz reveals to Harley that he's word out on the streets that ex Falcone members and Black Mask cons have been murdered and they're held up in this house, in this warehouse, and she ends up going there. Why she thinks that would be a place to go looking for the person who's out to kill her, I don't know. Why she thinks somebody who would want her dead would also want Falcone's men's dead and Black Mask's men dead, I don't know. So so far I think the story is a little bit wonky how we're getting to the end point, but it is an interesting cliffhanger with the Harley who laughs. The Batman who laughs has his fan base. I'm not really among them. I'm still recovering from death metal. I don't ever want to see Batman Who Laughs for a long time. I don't really care for the character, but we'll have to see what this Harley Who Laughs is all about, and hopefully, well, frankly, at least it's not the Batman Who Laughs. Let's put it that way. I'll settle for Harley Who Laughs. But in any event, I'm interested to see where Stephanie Phillips takes this. And so, I'm not sure how long this story arc is, but I'm mildly curious. And again, I love the art. Kudos to Matteo Loli and colorist Rain Baruto. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, I thought the art was pretty solid as well. Definitely a change from the Riley Rosmo art, but we have that on Robin to talk about coming up.
That's
But anyway,
exactly
next
right.
book to chat about, DC versus Vampires number 11, penultimate issue, written by James Tynion the fourth and Matthew Rosenberg, colors by Otto Schmidt with Francesco Mortarini and Perlago Casolino. Um, and it's weird that it says colors by, but it doesn't say. I guess it says art and colors by Otto Schmidt. So yeah, usually Otto colors his own art. So yeah, we're getting down to it. The end of DC versus Vampires. I'm sure they're going to have some follow up and other series because it's been so popular. But heading down toward the end here, what'd you think?
I'm enjoying this. I think it's interesting that the DC Vampires All Out War I've I'm not enjoying as much, although that's gotten better with the Mary Marvel Billy Batson coming to the forefront. DCV Vampires All Out War is sort of a corollary issues to this, a 6-issue series that has black, white, and red. I like this main series proper. I would have preferred all the things, all the events, all the major events that happen in this DC Vampire story. I wish it would have all happened in this 12 issues. I would have even preferred oversized issues because it's a pretty epic tale. I like it. I love the alternate covers here. There's one of Plastic Man that looks absolutely amazing, where he looks like a vampire and he's all twisted. It's crazy. Forgive me, I'm not sure exactly who the artist is, but there's some really, really great art with Plastic Man, Harley alternate covers, and Plastic Man and Harley Quinn. Really great. The story itself, and again, it's James Tynion's the writer, along with Rosenberg. Otto Schmidt is on the art. It starts off with Alfred essentially telling John Constantine that, oh, by the way, Damien took off with Batgirl and Frankenstein, and they took off to go into Gotham. So that freaks out Constantine because he's drinking, getting drunk, figures it's the end of the world, that all is lost. And it's clear that Constantine's not aware of what we readers are aware of, and that there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on in this DCV Vampires universe. There's been sort of a lot of moving parts here. Trying to make sense of the black, white, and red coloring and the color schemes of All Out War has been a little bit of a chore at times, but weaving through that, there are some interesting plot lines, things that have had developed. We know that Supergirl, we know that there is Supergirl. They want to get Supergirl into the sun so she can power up, and that's the goal here of DCV Vampires in the main series. And then over in the All Out War, they're trying to get they're trying to get they were working on Deathstroke, and then they were working on who the hell was it? The a weather wizard to try to get him to open up the skies to bring the sunlight in and what have you, and then finally Shazam and Mary Marvel. Mary Marvel ended up making a sacrifice. But in this particular issue, it takes place in Gotham and in Australia, and also in Smallville. And in Gotham, we've got Damien, Frankenstein, Black Canary, Batgirl, and they're attacked by vampires in Gotham, and their goal is to get through because they want to send Batgirl Barbara Gordon to take on Nightwing, to take out the King of the Vampires, Dick Grayson, and they ultimately get through a bunch of roadblocks, and they get the cavalry arrives in the form of Cassandra Cain, Stephanie Brown, Arsenal, Signal, Batwing, Luke Fox, and even the Huntress, and it's very kinetic. There's a lot of action. It's Otto Schmidt is just I'm really enjoying the art here. It feels very kinetic, very fast paced. I love the color scheme. You get a sense that you're in this vampiric world, and ultimately in Gotham they manage to overcome the roadblock, only to realize that once they jump over the roadblock, Batgirl and the team they end up they're facing Cassie Sandsmark, Power Girl, Mr. Freeze, Mother Panic, and Cage Beast in their vampiric forms. So we know that we're gonna have to wait until next issue to see what happens with them. Meanwhile, in Smallville, we have Coal Cash, Swamp Thing, and Green Arrow that are finally powering up to ultimately break out of the blood bank prison and take on. I believe to do that they're gonna have to take out Hawkman, the vampiric Hawkman. And on the other front in Australia, we got Steel, Jaina, the Wonder Twin, and Supergirl essentially taking on Martian Manhunter with the help of Lobo. Lobo shows up because what's been happening is that the vampires have made a deal with all the aliens on Earth, saying, "Look," and the vampires actually hired Lobo to get Lobo's help to load up all the aliens on the planet because Martian Manhunter said, "Look, we're vampires, but we don't want to piss off aliens that live on Earth. Let's send the aliens home because we don't want to end up with planets getting pissed off at Earth and invading us because of what we did to their aliens. So let's just send the aliens home." And the deal made by Martian Manhunter is that we'll send the aliens home, and the deal is the aliens won't invade Earth and they'll leave Earth alone to us vampires. So that was the deal made. But in order to do that, with the help of Lobo, they're trying to scoop up all these aliens. But ultimately, it's revealed here that Lobo helps Steel and Jaina and Supergirl, and they create a distraction. And instead of loading up aliens onto the ship to ship aliens off of Earth, they actually smuggle Supergirl Kara onto the jet or the rocket, and ultimately it explodes at the end, and that's the final page. And presumably, Supergirl has reached the stars, reached space where she can be powered up by the sun. And this is the 11th issue. We got one issue left, so we're headed into this is the penultimate chapter, and so lots happen. A lot of again kinetic energy, color schemes are great. The dialogue here with Lobo, Martian Manhunter, Cole Cash, Green Arrow, Swamp Thing. I mean, I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this much more as with how it flows and its color schemes, and it's instead of just using three colors than I do all DC Vampires All Out War. But what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. I mean, the thing is, the pacing on this whole entire series, this whole event, this whole timeline has been so uneven, right? Like it started off kind of slow. We're talking multiple issues that cover a span of days, and then we have other issues where months go by, months and months. The vampires have taken over the whole world, and now there's one issue left, and they're just getting Kara to space. They're just or above the cloud cover, as it were, so that she can recharge her batteries, so to speak, her solar energy cells, and I guess save the day. And then we also have members of the Bat family, um, Dick Grayson's comrade in arms, if you will, that are going to attack him. So everything's coming to a head, and it feels like it's building to something. It just felt like we took a little detour in the middle where they needed to really kind of make us understand just how big of a story it is and how much scope it has, which then spun off into other one shots, and you mentioned the DC Vampires All Out War. So yeah, this isn't going away just because there's only one issue left of this main series. Just like what was it, Deceased? This isn't going away. Expect another follow-up miniseries. Expect I don't know. Maybe they'll get a villain this time to take Dick Grayson's place as King of the Vampires. I mean, it just feels like, based on the pacing and how fast the story unfolded so far, it started off slow, then it sped up. Now it's slowing down again, and with only one issue left, I don't know how it wraps up with a satisfying conclusion. I guess probably the answer is that it doesn't. So, um, but as far as the art goes, it's the same thing that I feel about the art that I felt throughout. It's not the cleanest work from Otto Schmidt, but still gorgeous to look at and still really powerful storytelling. And the colors are bright and vibrant and lots of deep reds and blues. And it's a beautiful book to look at. So, all right, up next we have Batman Gotham Knights Gilded City #2. This is from writer Evan Narcisse. Abel is the artist. Um, it just says John for colors. I'm not sure
Yeah,
John
I know
who.
it's weird.
It just says John, and then Steve Wan's on letters. So we saw last issue that there's some sort of mix of Joker toxin and Scarecrow's fear toxin, and it's mixed up, but it's topical apparently, and these items that people sought after, makeup or shoes or toys or whatever, video game consoles or whatever latest hottest thing, were kind of coated with it, and people would touch it and they would kind of go crazy and start fighting over each other. So Batman has some clues that it's Bloodhaven, where the stuff is coming from, or there's a shipment there, or some kind of clue that leads him there. He gets to Bloodhaven. He actually has a fight with Nightwing. So apparently, in this iteration of the DC universe, um, Dick Grayson and Bruce aren't really on the greatest of terms. So they have a fight, but they do somewhat come to an understanding. And Dick is sort of grateful that Batman is there, and Batman, for his part, is trying to get along. And Tim Drake is the current Robin. So it's the same continuity as the video game, Gotham Knights video game. So if you're a fan of that, this is probably going to be right up your alley. And then interspersed with this is the backup, which I suppose is trying to give us the origin of whatever this Joker slash Scarecrow toxin is. Because there's somebody in Gotham back in the late 1800s that is peddling something called falling star water, which is leading to deaths of people and then their corpses missing. And at the end, this mysterious character that was last issue was saving some persons of color from some bigots on the road to Gotham, some like Klansmen, for lack of a better term. I know the Klan didn't exist back then, but white supremacists regardless. He hooks up with a guy whose brother is missing. They go to the Potter's Field where supposedly his brother's buried, and there's all these zombie like people there, and nobody's quite sure what's going on. But then when this other mysterious figure shows up and seems to team up with the guy whose brother's missing and this other mass adventure, um, he helps them. But then as soon as all the zombies, for lack of a better word, are incapacitated, he then turns on them. And this kind of Batman analog from back in the day is like, wait, what are you doing? Why are you killed an innocent guy? And like, what's going on? And the person doesn't say anything, and he's got a mask on. And it's a little reminiscent, maybe something you may have seen before. It's black instead of white, but it does look like it has a little, almost a beak between the two glowing yellow eyes. And we've seen those glowing yellow eyes on any number of Talons back in the day. And then just to kind of seal that, it says next issue, Horrors of the Court. So got to be Court of Owls back then. We know that's around the time that they had their origin. So interesting enough. I mean, I don't really have any experience with the Gotham Knights video games, but I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's definitely different for being a Batman title. There's not a whole heck of a lot of Batman in it. There's as much Nightwing as there is Batman, and then the backup story or the flashbacks part of the story to me is even more interesting, and there is no Batman in the flashback. So I'm enjoying this more than I thought. I mean, usually the video game tie-in stuff, I can't even get through it. I mean, I did get through the Fortnite DC series, but the Marvel one, I didn't. Made it like 2 issues, 1.5 issues, and I was done. Just not a gamer, so I don't have that draw. But this is 6 issues, and I would recommend checking it out just for that sort of Batman of yesteryear story, if you will. Not that he's given himself the name Batman, but it's pretty obvious that's what he's an analog for. So, anyway, what did you think?
Yeah, it's it's funny. First thing I want to talk about is who the hell is this mysterious Batman in 1847 Gotham? Because he's not called Batman, and we haven't gotten a name for him yet. And but yet when I look at I think it's cover C on the wanted posters for this cool looking Batman like character from 1847. I think his name is Runaway. The name
Could be.
Runaway, the capture of a Runaway. So is that his name, Runaway? Uh, I wonder if people who in the video game, if he's going to have a name or if he's in the video game. But I just find it interesting. Maybe that's I tried to find some ideas to what this Batman analog character's name is in 1847. But in any event, I think it's interesting. You talked about the falling star water of in 1847. This traveling salesman selling falling star water, which probably in the present a remnant of that is responsible for what I'm calling the FOMO virus. This virus that they believe is a combination of a fear toxin, although it's not quite Scarecrow's fear toxin, and it's not quite something else. They're not sure what it is, but it's a nanoparticulate aerosol filter of some kind, and it causes people to go crazy and obsess over things. Like if you're a comic collector, you'll obsess over comics. If you collect graphic cards, you'll want to collect all the best graphic cards, and that's sort of what's happening. And I'm not really sure what the end game is here. I'm not even sure who the bad guys are. We got this character you mentioned at the end might probably be a remnant of the Court of Owls. Next issue is going to be called Horror of the Court, like the reference to Court of Owls. I'm not really sure what's the point of this sparkling falling star water. How is it related to present day Gotham? But it's interesting. It's interesting. It's just a little choppy. The narrative's a little choppy. The writer here, Yvonne Narcisse, I'm not really familiar with him. The narrative's a little choppy. It could be a little bit more clear, but I want to give him some props for actually weaving an interesting narrative. It's he's taken some chances here, and he's clearly confident in the story he's telling. And I didn't mind that I had to reread it twice a little bit. I think I got somewhat of a handle on it, but he's piqued my interest, and I agree with you. This is better than I had thought it was. This is better than your typical video game sort of that I would have largely probably ignored. But he's actually got me curious here as to what's going to go on. So I'm looking forward to the next issue.
Yeah, and again, I think if you have experience playing the video game, you may get that much more out of it. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. All right, up next we have DC Mech issue number 5, written by, I just had the credits. Here we go. Written by Kenny Porter. Valdemar Rivas is the artist. Mike Spicer on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. Now, I haven't particularly been enjoying this title that much, but that being said, this is the book that I really thought was head and shoulders stood above what has come before in this series. So there's one issue left, and I think the reason that this was more enjoyable for me is so far, as much as I'm not into Robotech or BattleTech or any of those kind of things, Gundams or these robots that people get inside and battle. I mean, I like Pacific Rim, the movie from Guillermo del Toro, well enough. That was a pretty good movie. I've watched it a few times, but it's just not what I envisioned. Like, the Green Lantern mech with Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan, co-piloting it, or the Flash mech with Wally West piloting it. It hasn't worked for me. It's not something that really piques my interest. And then you add in the way Porter started it out with Kal-El coming to Earth in a Kryptonian mech, and just the infighting and the constant bickering and distrust between him and the other members of the Justice League, the analogs of the other members of the Justice League. Like, it just hasn't been any fun to watch them argue back and forth and fight and all this mistrust and distrust. The idea of heroes meeting up early on in their careers and getting into a fight, like that's the old school Marvel Silver Age stuff, right? Like every time, like think about, for example, I think the first time any heroes met in the Marvel Age would be Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, right? And of course they fought because they didn't know each other, didn't trust each other, that sort of thing. It's just the oldest cliche, and it's boring and it's not interesting. And then on top of that, just the dialogue between the two was just, Bruce Wayne was being so petty, so was Kal-El. Like, it just didn't work for me. I just didn't care for it, and so I haven't really been enjoying this. So in this particular issue, with only one issue left, all that goes by the wayside, and we get these heroes, because that's what they are, actually acting like heroes, setting aside any differences, giving each other the benefit of the doubt, and taking the fight to Darkseid. So there's some great action scenes. Valdemar Rivas, I've kind of gotten used to his art on the book, and I think he does a good job. Strong visual storytelling. The pacing has been a little bit choppy throughout. That's not that doesn't change here. It's not a big surprise, but it's nice that I feel some forward progression. It doesn't feel stagnant. Like, each issue that came before was like, okay, we've done this already. These guys don't touch each other. They're fighting. They're arguing. Like, that's all gone. That's all behind. And we get an actual double page spread with what they're calling the Justice Squadron, with these mechs lined up next to each other with Superman, Flash, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern. And they put the call out to other mechs around the Earth, and we see there's a Green Arrow type mech. There's an Aquaman type mech and a katana type mech that look like they're answering the call to come and fight alongside these the Justice Squadron to take the fight to Darkseid. So yeah, this was an enjoyable issue. I'm actually looking forward to the final issue after reading this one. So it took a little while to get there, but this is a series I'm enjoying now. So anything
Uh,
to add, Rocky?
well, just that I got to admit, I if Todd McFarlane does the action figures for Justice Squadron, I'm not normally into Transformers, but that looks pretty cool. the little the little boy in me, I like the Superman, Flash, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern as Transformers. That does look kind of cool. And we should give a shout out here. Kenny Porter is going to be one of the writers on one of the DC titles coming out in 2023. Refresh my memory. Which one is it? You're on mute.
Was it uh, was it the Cyborg title? Does that sound right?
No,
Or is
no.
that one that doesn't have
I
that doesn't have a creative
what
team?
is it? It was I
You know
guess
what?
we'll think of it.
I'll look it up right now. I guarantee I'm going to go on Twitter and I'll put in Kenny Porter.
Yeah.
I guarantee it's the Superboy because
Superboy,
of
yeah.
course he's got
He
it.
won
Of
the
course,
round robin. He
that's
won the
right.
round
That's
robin.
right. He won the round robin. Yeah. See, I knew if I went to his Twitter account, he'd have it pinned as his big news, which
Yeah.
rightly so. If I was writing a title for DC, that would be pinned on my Twitter too.
Yeah,
So yeah.
so it's interesting. Yeah, so I'm really curious to read. Like, he's having a lot of fun here with DC Mech, but to me this isn't a title that I can properly judge how he's going to write a more of a mainstream hero in the mainstream DC universe. But
Well, keep in mind that remember he's taking Superboy away from Earth. Maybe particularly for that reason, I might have more in common with this DC Mech series than we might normally
yeah,
think,
well,
since he
we
doesn't
shall
need to
see.
tie in. Yeah. So,
Connor Kent will turn into a transformer at some point. Maybe, I don't know.
who knows? Who knows?
Yeah,
Uh, excuse me. Right
yeah.
up next, Detective Comics number 1066, Something in the Way, Part One, which is interesting. And they're going to break it up into arcs so they can sell it in trade. But this, my understanding is this whole Rom V detective run is really one big story with little sub stories, I guess. So he is the writer. Ivan Reis is the penciler. Danny Mickey on inks. Dave Stewart on colors. Ariana Mayer on letters. Just to talk. Well, you know what? I'm going to let you go first because I'm curious your thoughts on this before I chime in. So, what do you think,
Uh,
Detective 1066?
right. Well, first I want to give a shout out to for the standard covers here. I I got sort of mixed feelings about them. On the one hand, I want to compliment them because they all have the same visual. They have the same artistic style, and I actually kind of like that. And it's the style is very Ram V. Ram V is really into the esoteric, sort of the deep themes, the deep thinking. He's metaphysical and the supernatural. That's right up Ram V's alley. And so the covers here really reflect his storytelling sensibilities. Uh, at the same time, I wish the posing of Batman on each one of the covers all the time. It could be Batman in any adventure. It's not really. I don't really find it directly related to the content. That's my criticism of most covers. But in any event, so there's maybe an underhanded compliment that I just gave for that. The cover B though I really like. This almost looks like a painting to me. Uh, Again, I don't think it has really nothing to do with the content, which again that's typical of covers, but I don't mind it. But um, covers here are all the covers are interesting to say the least. But in any event, with respect to the story itself, last issue ended with Jim Gordon rescuing Batman after Batman has basically saved Prince Arzin and saved them from being attacked. The Ogham family were coming into the Gotham Harbor, and Talia's League of Assassins attacked them, and Batman actually ended up saving Prince Arzim, even though it was all sort of a ruse. Prince Arzim and the Royal Orgham family sort of planned it all, and they're planning they came to Gotham, this Orgham family, to basically take over Arkham Asylum because they used to own the land upon which Arkham Asylum is based from a couple centuries ago, and they're coming back to reclaim it. Meanwhile, Batman is recovering. Jim Gordon, you know, heals, helps, helps heal Batman, takes care of him, doesn't even, even bandages up Bruce Wayne or Batman's face. Does it in the darks because he doesn't want to know who Batman actually is. He even tells Batman that. In the meantime, the most interesting thing about this is that this Gaul, or Gael, Gaul, Gaul Orgham, he's sort of like the leader of their family, and he very clearly he's manipulating, or thinks he's manipulating, Two-Face, Harvey Dent, and he's manipulating events. He killed Ubu. Is it Ubu? Is his name? Ra's al Ghul's main man. He killed him, and he dumped Ubu's body in the river, and it ended up washing ashore, or being found. And the autopsy of Ubu's body revealed that he's got some oils mixed in with his body that was only found in Old City Gotham power plants or power stations. And because whatever the plan is, that this Royal Orgham family, their plan is to take over the power stations of Gotham. That's part of their plan. We don't know what exactly it is they're planning, but we know it involves Two-Face, and they're utilizing Two-Face to get basically control of the mob, the underground in Gotham City, and they want to control the power stations as well. So clearly, this is another power play by yet another family to come into Gotham. In that respect, we longtime Batman readers, we could, being very critical, say, look, we've heard this story before. We've seen this story before played out 1,000 different ways. How is this going to be different? And maybe the answer is that the answer lies with Two-Face itself. I actually really like what Ram V's doing here with Two-Face, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I find it interesting. It'll be interesting to hear your take on it, Jace. But I'm getting the sense here that it was actually, it's Harvey is, I love how Ram V is having Harvey speak to his Two-Face persona. Now, that we've seen that before many times, but what I find interesting here is that Harvey himself is in control of Two-Face, but Harvey himself is pretending to be Two-Face. Harvey actually even kills one of his, a guy named Louis, one of his own underlings, who sort of defied him, and it was actually Harvey in complete control of himself, pretending to be his alternate persona and killing one of his underlings for no other reason than to maintain the deception that Two-Face is in control when it's really Harvey. That's what I find really interesting. So we got an interesting situation, as I read it, where Harvey is actually the one in control, but just barely, and he's doing it to try to get one up on the Royal Orgham family that is trying to use him. And I find that very interesting. So in many ways, it looks as if Two-Face is actually in control here, and he is the potential wild card that may ultimately end up helping Batman defeat the Orgham family. And I find it really interesting. And then at the end, we end up Batman is in the power station, and he confronts Gal, who was actually a werewolf known as the Wolf of Bizajahan, and Mr. Freeze is there, and ultimately, as Batman battles the Wolf of Bizajahan, this Mr. Freeze explodes one of his freeze bombs, and it freezes Batman, and that's the cliffhanger that it ends on. But I'm really intrigued. I'm really intrigued by this main story, and and the backup story, which deals with Two-Face, I was a little bit confused by, written by Simon Spurrier, but I um, that I didn't really need to fully understand what was going on. I'll have to reread it, but the main story here really, really sort of pulled me in, and I'm really fascinated by the role that Two-Face is going to play in this story. So, what do you think?
Yeah, this is another one where this was my favorite issue so far. I've talked about expecting this to be kind of dark and dreary and gothic and operatic. Romvi has told us as much, and those aren't things that really appeal to me. And we've had plenty of hints of dark magic and that sort of thing. And again, that's not something that really appeals to me. So all that takes a backseat to some actual action in this issue, and some gorgeous art by Ivan Reis, whose line work tends to be really clean. You look at like the work he did on Superman uh, with uh, with Bendis, either Bendis's Man of Steel, Superman Man of Steel, or on the regular series. It's very clean. It's very traditional superhero comic. This being the kind of this darker gothic Gotham City that Rom V's setting a story in, you don't want clean art. You want something that's a little sketchier, that's a little more textured, and we definitely get that. So kudos to Ivan Reis for altering his style subtly to give that feel, and also to Danny Mickey, the inker. He's the one that's responsible for a lot of those textures. So I thought the art was really, really fantastic. And I don't know if I didn't know it was Ivan Reis, looking through it, if I would recognize it as his line work. Um, when I'm flipping through and I know that it's him, it's easy to see that it's him in the way he lays out the panels, the composition of the panels, the body language, just the scenes that the way he chooses to depict things. It's clearly him, but it just looks so different from anything he's done before. So I really appreciate that. I'm a big fan of Ivan's work, so getting to see it kind of in a new style is really, really cool. And then this idea that Harvey Dent. So you can think about Two-Face as like a different personality, or different side of the same coin, to take it literally with the coin that he always flips. And so when Two-Face is in charge, he's calling the shots. The Harvey Dent personality is submerged, and Two-Face is always Two-Face, and the words coming out of his mouth are Two-Face, and Harvey is only vaguely aware of the choices and the actions that Two-Face is making. And there's no direct communication, right? There's no, he looking in the mirror and talking to himself and having one psyche, talk to the other. That's just not the way that it works. But because the Orgum family has done whatever they've done, infected Harvey with whatever they infected him with, or exposed him to in the first issue of Rom V's run, the Asmir, as it's called, AZMR, uh, basically what it's done, even though Harvey's still Harvey, his personality is still in charge. That Two-Face personality, that Two-Face persona, is now a voice in his head. And so it's a very uneasy existence for Harvey when he has that personality, that Two-Face um, malevolence, if you will, trying to influence him and talking to him, and trying to convince him to do things, and also goading him, because, as Rocky said, Harvey's having to do things, ruthless things, that go against his personality, go against his nature, in order to keep from getting torn apart. Like, if all these underlings knew that he wasn't Two-Face, that he was the much more mild-mannered and sane Harvey Dent, he'd get the crap kicked out of him, because he's just not that ruthless person that Two-Face is. So it's very interesting, because you can also see that despite this Two-Face persona goading and poking, and in a way trying to, I think, break Harvey, so that Harvey's personality will subsume and allow the Two-Face personality to take over. There's a desperation from the Two-Face personality, because it is trapped. And you can almost think of that Asmir as almost a third aspect, because we did learn kind of that uh, right-hand man of the Orgum family, the one that turns into the werewolf. Um, he goes to Harvey at one point and says, after Harvey meets with all his underlings and shoots the one who had taken over the criminal enterprise, and like, hey, you should have known, you should have come after me, you should have just uh, you know been keeping my chair warm instead of doing what you're doing. And so Harvey kills him. Then this werewolf guy shows up and is saying, hey, I see and hear what you see and hear, just as a reminder. So whatever Harvey's infected with, it allows the Orgum family to know what Harvey's doing. We're still not quite clear on just why is he going along. Is this Asmir, can they force him to do something? Is it painful? Like, what is it about what he's been exposed to that allows the Orgum family to give him orders and have Harvey follow them. And then you wonder, well, if Harvey were to voluntarily give up control to the Two-Face personality, is the Two-Face personality also affected by whatever it is that's controlling Harvey? So there's a lot of mystery, a lot of questions about that. Um, so that's part of the reason I enjoyed this issue so much. Another part of the reason is just because we got Batman. We got Batman being Batman, fighting a werewolf, fighting Mr. Freeze. We didn't have a bunch of the hokey spirituality, dark spirits, and dark magic, and all that sort of stuff that we had in the first few issues that I really didn't care for. This is more of a straightforward Batman story. As far as the Cy Spurrier Two-Face story in the back, yeah, it's not the easiest thing to follow. It gets into some of Two-Face's childhood, and I think it has more to do a little bit with kind of providing context with the Harvey personality and the Two-Face voice in his head being able to communicate back and forth, and giving people who may not be aware of who Two-Face is a better idea of what's going on, in a way hinting that there were always two aspects of Harvey, even though he wasn't always disfigured. It's almost like that darker part of him that manifested because of trauma that he was exposed to as a child, being bullied.
Well,
And
who was? Do you know who is this person? Like, who is this Indian-looking person that touches
yeah,
his
so
painting?
Harvey
Who is
is
that?
going since Harvey has been in charge. He's been going to some sort of psychiatrist, and it looks like somebody from the Orgum family was threatening him or threatening her. And all of a sudden, when Harvey goes to protect her, this Indian looking or Native American person kind of attacks him, and lays hands on him, and that's sort of where we get the flashbacks. Apparently, this guy is basically looking back, like by touching Harvey, can look back through Harvey's memories, is what I took that as. But again, I think mostly this story is just to provide context and let people know, yeah, these are Harvey and Two-Face are two. You almost think of it as like two different people trapped in the same body,
Yeah.
if you will.
I
So
It was weird because it was like his scabs were talking to him. Like it really didn't work for me. Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
took
I
me
mean that
right out of the story. I
yeah.
didn't get it. I
He's
didn't I
well,
don't know.
so he's laying. I took it as this character is putting his hands on the scarred side of Harvey's face, because that is the trauma that he's experienced throughout his childhood, with an abusive father and all the bullying that he had to put up with. Even before he was Two-Face, there were two personalities. There was kind of the darker side of Harvey that he sort of had to
Mm.
manifest because of what he went through, and then the lighter side that became a district attorney and wanted to fight for the good. So you can almost think of when that accident happened and he had the acid thrown in his face, it created scars that are an outward manifestation of the internal scars that he always had, if you will. So that's kind of how I took it, and I think it's what Simon Spurrier is trying to explore. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. This is a backup where once all four parts are out, like go back and read it again, and then probably read it again to try to understand, or just skip
I
it and say, I don't want to pay an
I
extra
just
dollar and have this backup.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really don't think it's needed, and I got the gist of that. Like, I mean, I can kind of
Yeah,
infer that
I
with
would
the
say
talking
it's more.
scar, but it was
Yeah,
so totally
I think
unnecessary.
that's more that to me the backup is more for people that may not be familiar, like newer readers that don't have
I
hundreds of
Yeah, I don't
Two
think.
Face issues that
Yeah,
they've read
I
over
think
the
newer
years.
readers will be turned off by it myself. I think they're just gonna be baffled by it,
Yeah,
but
it's
maybe
it's
I'm
hard
wrong.
it's hard to follow. And again, I think a lot of these backups, because of the nature of an 8-page story, they're tough to write, they're tough to pace, and they're tough to read, because you get such a small part of the story, and then a whole month goes
Well,
by before you read the next installment. I can't remember.
well,
So
the
yeah.
the other thing, do you know what I thought of when because it actually surprised me when I read that Two Face's father was abusive. That is I didn't think as but then I think we just had that Two-Face One Bad Day Two-Face written by Marika Tamaki, and I never got the impression that his dad was really all that abusive. All it was just that Harvey didn't like his
He
dad.
wasn't physically abusive, but he was pretty manipulative, and
Okay, so
you
I
know,
guess there's maybe some consistency there, but I realize that story might be out of continuity. I don't know, but in any event, um, I was actually a little bit. I would have liked a little bit more clarity as to exactly what his father may have done. Um, but it's neither here nor there. The visuals are fantastic in the backup. I mean, the art's really really good in the backup. I mean, it's so the visuals, like with the scars and everything, it definitely enhances maybe the narrative of what he's trying to do. And I can fall upon my own sword because I can, sometimes I feel like on some of this stuff I got to be in the right frame of mind to really grasp it. But anyways,
Yeah, it's fair enough. All right, up next we have Deathstroke Incorporated number 15, Year 1, Part 6, final chapter of this. Written by Ed Brisson, art by Dexter Soy, colors by Veronica Gandini, letters by Steve Wands. I really enjoyed this. First of all, some fantastic covers, even, especially the main cover with Deathstroke and Rose, his daughter, Ravager, by Mikhail Yanin. So really great covers all the way around. And yeah, we get the final story, which I think um, really sums up who Slade Wilson is. I mean, this is a perfect example of a year one story. Slade, at the end of this, isn't the Deathstroke we know now. He hasn't become quite that corrupted, quite that jaded, but also not as experienced. But to see him make the choices he makes, to see him sort of finish his first contract, complete his first mission, if you will, this truly is a story of Slade Wilson becoming Deathstroke and sort of coming into his own after being experimented with injected with experimental serums by the Army, by the U.S. government, and really by the end of this, we come to know, just like Slade comes to know, who he is as Deathstroke and what his priorities are. And we know he's going to be a terrible father. He even talks. He goes back home. He lies to his wife about where he was. He lies to his wife about being happy that they have a second child on the way. And he says, "Yeah, um, this is a great life." Or actually, he says, "I don't know why it took me so long to realize this life is good. It's a good cover." If he's going to go out and be an assassin, be the world's greatest assassin, I mean, what better uh, cover than a wife and a family and a boring job in the suburbs? And it's all a front because really what he wants is to be out there killing people. So, yeah, Slade Wilson's a bad guy, and this is a reminder of it. The only thing that might be worse than him being a bad guy is he's a bad father, right? That's pushes him even further over. You can be a bad guy and still care about your kids and still be a good father, but man, he doesn't check any of the boxes. Absent father, bad father, yells abusive when he is there, and guys out there killing people. So I mean, I guess the one thing you can say is that his job pays well, so he's providing financially very well for his children.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's not a wonder. I mean, if you're familiar with Deathstroke but never really read an origin story of him, you can understand why his kids hate him when you read this year one story. So and the Dexter Soy art very consistent throughout. Dexter Soy, his artwork, his line work isn't quite as clean. It's not my favorite style, but he's a fantastic visual storyteller. Um, uses a lot of close-ups, which I really appreciate because it gives a different feel. And this book doesn't look like what every other book looks like. And there's a couple of great scenes, like Slade throwing one of his adversaries out the back of a cargo plane, for lack of a better term, without batting an eye. He's just like just tosses him out. So Slade is one cold-blooded guy, that's for sure. Anyway, what'd you think of it?
Uh, well, you hit the nail on the head. This is a really great. This is a great conclusion to a 6 issue origin story. And for those people that want to, the Coles Notes version of the essence of Slade Wilson and his formative origin, this is it. Absolutely. I even like the way that writer Ed Brisson sort of introduces us with a character that I suspect we're going to see again, and that's that very character that you mentioned who was thrown out of the airplane. His name is Muzzle. It was last issue. This issue begins with Muscle essentially having, at the end of last issue, Muzzle along with his two partners, Bolster and Stock. Bolster and Stock were killed by Slade, but Muzzle ended up surviving, and he ends up taking Slade and Wintergreen hostage here at the beginning of the issue, and uh, ultimately, before Muzzle can. Muzzle's job is to return. He's been told by Walsh, who is actually the boss. I mean, Deathstroke's boss Walsh sent Deathstroke to kill Dr. Campbell, who was created essentially the program, that the super soldier program. And and then when Walsh thought that Deathstroke was dead, Walsh then sent Muzzle, Bolster, and Stock, Muzzle's crew, to take out Dr. Campbell. Well, that pissed off Deathstroke. When Deathstroke survived, and then he didn't like anyone else getting his contract, so he ended up taking out Bolster and Stock, and then here in this issue he takes out Muzzle. But I suspect Muzzle is still alive. He was just shot and thrown out of the airplane. So I suspect we're going to see Muzzle again. I hope we see Muzzle again, because it's a nice callback to the origin. It's always good to have a villain that's in the origin somehow, that some remnant of them ends up being like a sort of a lifelong nemesis. So I hope you see Muzzle again. So I like that. And of course the best part was the character work, where at the end it's so obvious that Slade is full of BS. I mean, he wants to be an assassin. Right now he's in the early years of his life. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants to be a kick-ass assassin, have 2 3 kids, and the white picket fence, and get to kill anybody and get paid $1 million a hit, and he'll just live his life. What could go wrong? Well, we all kind of know the answer to that, but kudos to Ed Brisson for making me enjoy a 6-issue series that, quite frankly, I had my doubts about uh, when it first came out.
Yeah, again, it's a fantastic origin story, and we talked about when it first came out, was the first announced, first issue. We were like, man, we know the origin of Deathstroke. Like, what is this gonna add? But Ed Brisson, he added a lot. I think a lot of the origin stories that we had previously were okay. It was this event followed by this event, followed by this event, followed by this event. What this origin story really leaned into is the emotionality and the motivation behind the choices. And I said it all throughout the series. You can see the train wreck happening. You can see these terrible, terrible choices that Slade Wilson is making. And you're like, God, why are you choosing to do that? Why are you going down that path? You can see him doing it, and you want him not to make those choices, but you 100% understand why he does it. You completely understand. Ed Brisson gives all that. It's just, in a way, it makes Deathstroke and Slade Wilson a more sympathetic character, because he was experimented on, and some of those chemicals affected his brain, right? He craves violence. He craves conflict. So what better job for him to have than an assassin? And that's all, already his natural predilection to be a soldier, to be a weapon. So yeah, guy should have never got married, should have never settled down, should have never been a father. So all right, up next we have DC Horror presents Sergeant Rock versus Army of the Dead #3, written by Bruce Campbell. Eduardo Riso is the artist. Christian Rossi does the colors, and Rob Lee on letters. What do you think of this?
Well, I've been enjoying this from the beginning. I mean, Bruce Campbell, I mean, he's a B-level actor. What's not to love about Bruce Campbell? I mean, he's I never. This is the first comic I've ever read that he's, to my knowledge. I don't, if he's written other comics, I've not read them. This is the first Bruce Campbell comic I've read, and this third issue it's fun. And Eduardo Rizzo, I mean, his art is just perfectly suited for this. This is Sergeant Rock of Easy Company taking on the Army of the Dead. Take Basically, their mission is to, in this issue, they're in the belly of the beast. They're in the heart of Berlin, and their job is to essentially take out the doctor, Dr. Morel, who is Hitler's doctor. And we know right from the beginning here that Hitler himself is essentially the leader, of course, of the Army of the Dead, but Hitler himself is also undead himself. And apparently Dr. Morel at some point actually Hitler fed Hitler uh, some of the formula that he was working on that he normally would only feed to somebody who
Yeah,
is actually
I
dead.
don't think Hitler's. Yeah, I don't think Hitler's. Yeah, I think Hitler's sick. I don't think he's actually dead because he does ask the doctor for a higher dosage, and the doctor reminds him, "We haven't tested this stuff on anybody who's alive."
Yeah.
Hitler's like, "I don't care, give it to me." So
Yeah. So at some point, well, it doesn't happen this issue, but at some point we're going to have Sergeant Rock, I'm sure, have a one-on-one battle with Hitler himself, or an undead Hitler, or zombified Hitler. So we can look forward to that. But this issue, I mean, again, if for longtime readers, or even those who are even have a passing familiarity with Sergeant Rock, I've had more than that since when I was younger. I used to read a lot more Sergeant Rock when I was younger, but we don't get a lot of Sergeant Rock in comics anymore. We got a little bit of Sergeant Rock in Death Metal, but he was even, ironically enough, Sergeant Rock was actually kind of an undead creature by Scott Snyder in Death Metal, but he was given inspirational speeches. But that's the last time where I'd really, it's rare that we get a good Sergeant Rock story. But we get the whole Easy team here. Rag, Sure Shot, Dozer, Short Round, Willie, Hothead, and we got multiple different kinds of weapons here. Uh, and Bruce Campbell has had some fun in that respect. I find that where this differs from a lot of the classic Sergeant Rock stories that I've read in the past, where that are usually illustrated by Joe Kubert, was that he's given the Easy Company more extraordinary weapons. He's sort of he's given them all different types of tear gas launchers, longer range sharpshooter rifles, bigger looking bazookas, uh, more of a heavy counter assault rifles that shoot 30 rounds of gun shells, and so he's given them more powerful weapons, and you can see why, because Edward Rizzo wants the opportunity to draw graphically violent scenes of zombies getting their guts blown out, and he uses it to great effect. And there's a lot of great scenes here of just Sergeant Rock and Easy Company kicking ass. They break up into two teams, Team Rock and Team Dozer, and they're just basically essentially sort of breaking into the bunker. And it's just action packed. This is fun. I can already imagine that I'm going to be picking up this in hardcover form. I hope it comes out in hardcover form. We got 3 issues left, and I expect more just fun action, great dialogue, and just more kick blood World War II action. So, what do you think?
yeah, I thought it was okay. Not much in terms of moving the narrative forward, in as far as how is this happening, what's the end game. This was an action packed issue for sure,
Yeah,
but it's all about Easy Company going in there and attacking the zombies, trying to kidnap Morel and find out how they're doing this. Um, so it's sort of, I guess, the first half of the mission, I'll
yeah,
say, because they haven't succeeded, and uh, one of the members of Easy Company they dress them up in a uniform, Nazi uniform. They take off one of the zombies to kind of sneak in there, um, and the guy's like, I don't even look like a Nazi. How's this going to work? They said, don't worry, Johnson. By the time the Nazis figure it out, they'll all be dead. So, I
yeah,
mean, well,
yeah,
I guess you have a good point, Sergeant Rock, because they're already dead, right?
yeah,
They're technically already dead. So whether they figure it out or not, they're already dead. Um, so I'm more kind of curious about the kind of the end game, like what's the end game here, and what
yeah.
exactly is going on, than I am about the particular action beats in this issue. But it's a lot of fun, and if you're a fan of war comics, a fan of World War II, or a fan of Sergeant Rock, I'm sure you're going to be enjoying it. So
Yeah, you're definitely right when you say that we could probably we didn't necessarily need all these pages of action. We could have got a little bit more of the plot behind the scenes. But we do have 3 issues left, so hopefully Bruce Campbell will bring it home. But this definitely feels like he's like the Quentin Tarantino of comic books, or he's trying to be anyway.
yeah, exactly. Okay, up next we have Tim Drake Robin #3. This is from writer Megan Fitzmartin. Riley Rosmo handles the art, Lee Luffridge on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. I have a feeling this is the one that you're not digging, that you think is really bad. I will say this: the Rosmo art is evolving, just like it did on Harley Quinn. The anatomy is not quite so exaggerated. Things are a little cleaner visually and easier to understand. Um, it starts off with Tim Drake talking about having nightmares, and he's fighting against these 4 different Robins: Dick Grayson, Stephanie Brown, um, Damian Wayne, and Jason Todd. And at first I thought, okay, so he's fighting like dream versions, but then no, come to find out, he assumes it's Clayface that has taken the form of these Robins that he's fighting against, and he saves a couple of his neighbors in the marina, and eventually um, these claymation versions of Robin, apparently 3 of them are captured, 1 gets away and goes back to the hideout, and sure enough, it is Clayface who is apparently the big bad here, which is interesting because last I heard, Clayface was a good guy. But it's not actually Clayface. There's something that some kind of chemical or something that these kids have been given, and it sounds like maybe some of Clayface's clay is kind of grafted on top of them, and then they can kind of shape it as they will. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. But I will say that this felt a little more like a traditional Robin book and a Robin story than we had in the first couple of issues. Um, but I still don't think that Riley Rosmo is the right artist for this. And I think that's really hurting the story. Um, I think clean art on this would really elevate it. And that's what comic art is supposed to do. And again, it's nothing against Riley's art itself. It's just I don't see his style, his exaggerated anatomy, as really conducive to a superhero book. So that's just my own personal thing. I'm sure there's people out there that love it, and more power to you if that's the case. What do you think?
Well, I found what you just described to be the least offensive thing in the entire comic, and that is namely, sure, he's fighting a bunch of Robins that the idea of
I know exactly what you're gonna
yeah,
say,
yeah,
but go
I'm
ahead.
sure you will. The whole Clayface thing was actually not that bad. I mean, I'll give kudos to Megan Fitzpatrick. It's not too often I've been able to do that, but I think the idea of a Clayface hybrid that it's kind of a synthetic oil that when it's coated on certain kids, it causes them to morph into different iterations based on the dreams or the psychological state of Tim. So all of Tim's insecurities, as manifested through his various feelings about the Bat family, seem to be able to affect the shapes of the clay that's on these kids. So that's actually an interesting idea. So I'll give full props. What I find just ridiculous about this, but again, it's not. I thought it was just silly. Was with Bernard. Randomly, Bernard shows up, and like literally just totally fluke. I mean, Tim Drake has just as Robin, Tim Drake as Robin has saved the people of the marina, and the people in the marina are exclaiming, "Oh, we've been saved by Robin! We've been saved by Robin!" And then lo and behold, totally coincidentally, all of a sudden, Robin runs into Bernard, and Bernard sees that Robin is hurt, and of course, now bear in mind that I'm guessing that Bernard and Tim have probably, I don't know, I'm guessing they probably got a little bit close at times. Maybe they were intimate a little bit, who knows? And he has no idea. And I know the whole Lois Lane Clark Kent thing. Lois didn't know Clark was Superman for the longest time. But it's just really weird that Bernard doesn't recognize Tim. I just find it funny.
I knew that's a,
And
I
and
yeah, it
and
bugged me. It bugged me too. I
yeah.
didn't mention it because I knew you would, but I will point this out in defense of the story. He's wearing a domino mask. He's wearing a mask. It covers like the immediate area around his eyes. Of course, he's not recognizable.
Yeah, I know, but it's even more absurd than that. I mean, so Bernard invites Robin back to his boat, and he just basically, I mean, okay, now granted, Robin, there was that Batman urban legend story where Bernard has met Robin before, and Robin did save his life before against those other whatever the hell that storyline was. And so he wants to thank Robin. I get that, but that would be like Superman saving the life of a girl, a woman, and she says, "Why don't you come back to my apartment and you can use the shower while you're there? You look all sweaty." Like, really? And Robin is talking to Bernard. Bernard doesn't know that Robin is Tim, and Bernard's going to invite Robin over to his boat, talking about his boyfriend, saying, "Go ahead, use the shower." What? This is ridiculous, and he does, and then the exposition. Fitzpatrick has, Tim gets out of the shower and says, "Oh my God, I have to put my suit. I can't believe I'm putting my Robin suit back on again." I'm thinking, like, why the hell are you showering there in the first place? Why didn't you just leave and then go back as Tim and then shower? I mean, it was just, the whole thing just seemed like, I mean,
I kept
again,
waiting
it's silly.
for.
It's silly. Like, it doesn't.
Well,
Sorry.
Tim has been kind of, wondering if he should let Bernard in on the secret that he is Robin, and he's been kind of vacillating on going one or the other. This could have been the perfect setup for it, right?
It could have.
Tim gets out of the shower. Bernard sees the mole on his butt,
Yeah.
on Robin's butt, and puts two and two together.
Yeah.
You're Tim Drake.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how could you keep this from me? Blah blah blah.
And then they can embrace, and Bernard can join Tim in the shower.
There you go.
And then,
maybe that's how it'll happen. Maybe Tim and Robin will kiss at one point, and that's when Bernard will realize. Yeah, it's problematic. I mean, they're feet away, just a few feet away from each other. And I was like, "This is your boyfriend. How do you not recognize him?"
Yeah, and again, but you know what? I will say, out of the first, I mean, this is the best issue so far. I mean, the first two issues, for me, they were unreadable, as a story. And again, Riley Rosmo in the art, I've become accustomed to his art. It's fine, and it's even quite detailed in parts, and I can compliment it in parts. I'm accustomed to it, and but I mean, narratively, this one was actually kind of silly, a little comical, and I actually kind of enjoyed it a bit, and I chuckled a bit, but it lacked a high degree of verisimilitude to me. But whatever, it's still the best issue so far. But anyways, still meh.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. Dark Crisis, the Dark Army #1. Mark Waid does this. This is so weird. I've never seen a comic broken down like this. So Mark Waid writes the script for pages 1 through 6, and then 37 through 40. And then you have somebody by the name of Delilah S. Dawson that writes the majority of the issue, pages 7 through 21. Like, that's so strange to me. And then you've got Dennis Culver, who writes pages 22 through 36. And then you've got art for the Mark Waid pages by Freddie Williams. And then Jack Abear does the art on the Delilah Dawson pages. And I don't know who does it doesn't say who does the art for 23 through. Oh, I guess there's some overlap. Yeah, I guess Freddie Williams does the Mark Waid pages as well as the Dennis Culver pages. So yeah, kind of weird. Adriana Lucas colors the whole thing, and Troy Petrie letters the whole thing. But the art, they didn't pick artists either whose styles are very similar to each other. I love Freddie Williams' art. I love Jack Herbert art, but they have very different styles. And I didn't think it necessarily meshed well together. It kind of took me out of the story at times. So anyway, give us a lowdown. What goes down in this issue, and what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'll just cut right to the chase. I wasn't a fan of this issue. I feel this is, you want to talk about false advertising, in my mind. Dark Crisis, the Dark Army. No, the Dark Army's not in this. Shadow creatures are in this. The shadow creatures are, and I guess you could say technically the shadow creatures are the Dark Army. But really, when I was thinking the Dark Army, I was looking forward to this because I was hoping and expecting that this was going to be actually some version of the heroes, some heroes fighting Necron, fighting Doomsday, fighting Black Hand, fighting Eclipso, fighting the big ticket, the big A-list villains of the DC universe. But no, they're just fighting shadow creatures. To make it worse, Damian, really? Damian takes Power Girl and Dr. Light and Booster Gold, Frankenstein and Red Canary, who's got less experience than anyone on the team. And these shadow creatures are so powerful that even Red Canary, who's been fighting for about 15 seconds, she can destroy a shadow creature with her staff. or like, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then the plot line here, basically, I'm just gonna they basically make their way. Damian is he wants to they need to follow the signal. Now what's the signal? It's not really clear what the signal is. It's but they're following a signal which is coming from the cosmic tuning fork. What's the cosmic tuning fork? Good question. We've never seen the cosmic tuning fork. We had a cosmic tuning fork at one time in the original Crisis, and this cosmic tuning fork was the device where Power Girl and various other heroes were tied to, and their powers were being drained and what have you. And Damian wants to, I guess the idea is to follow Pariah's chains to the cosmic tuning fork. I'm not really sure why there's chains. I didn't think there was chains. What chains? But there's. This is right from the dialogue here. You can understand that the choppiness of this narrative. This is yet again that the plot line of this is all over the place. The cosmic. The shadow demons attack when they finally find the cosmic tuning fork, and and Damian pushes a button on the cosmic tuning fork, and suddenly an ape talks to him. I'm not making this stuff up. This actually happens in the comic book. Why
Yeah,
does
well,
an ape?
they're on the jail ape Earth.
Well, sure, but again, the cosmic tuning fork was a centerpiece to, at least in the original Crisis, for all the Earths. So why this one particular would just show an ape? Anyways, I get it, because that was the joke. They talked about, do we have ape versions of ourselves and anything else? I get it, but the bottom line is, uh, they have to figure out a way to control the Dark Army. And there's all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a dark creature appears. We don't even know who it is. There's this dark entity that appears. It's not a single member of the Dark Army that we're aware of. It's an unknown dark creature. That's it. It's not Doomsday. It's not Necron. It's no one. It's just an unknown dark creature. It's ridiculous. And how they defeat it? Power Girl uses her heat vision. She shoots her heat vision at Dr. Light, and Dr. Light somehow then just powers up, because Dr. Light was created by the original Monitor in the original Crisis, and because she was created by the Monitor, her light has special significance to destroy shadow demons, and that's what she uses it to do. To to be and then to make one of the most, because I could talk for a length on this, but I'm going to try to truncate this. They end up in the House of Heroes, which is in the middle of the bleed. Now, in the House of Heroes contains, in basically a glorified fancy looking test tube, it contains the Orrery of Worlds, and the Orrery of Worlds is it's although it looks like it's a physical, it looks like a physical test tube with the 52 Earths in it. It's really a metaphysical representation of the multiverse, the original multiverse, or the multiverse with 52 Earths in it. But what's confusing about that is, I thought that we have the infinite Earths already. We already have the infinite Earths. I didn't know, but apparently we not only have infinite Earths now, we also have the Orrery of Worlds containing the original 52 Earths. And for whatever reason, Damian, for reasons, concludes that after talking with the artificial intelligence of the Harbinger says, you shouldn't have turned me on, because I had to be shut off to keep the Dark Army out of uh, the House of Heroes, because she needed to conserve her power to keep the Dark Army at bay. So the minute they turned on the AI Harbinger, that allowed the Dark Army into the House of Heroes, where they attacked. And fortunately, Dr. Light was able to defeat them all. And not only did all the shadow demons attack, but so did the dark infested Justice League Incarnate. Which answers your question, Jace, that you were asking, and many were asking, what the hell happened to Justice League Incarnate? And they were taken over by the shadow demons. I gotta wonder, why were Justice League Incarnate taken over by the shadow demons? Why weren't they given their dream world like the other members of the Justice League? Why were some heroes made into shadow creatures and some weren't? if Pariah needed all these heroes to bring forth the Infinite Earths, why didn't he create dream worlds for all the heroes and made some of them dark creatures? Again, plot
Because
point.
Rocky, reasons.
Reasons, yes, reasons. But anyways, you can tell I'm getting a little bit frustrated the more I'm talking about this. At the end of the day here, there's a lot of dialogue. Power Girl expresses frustration with Damien because Damien is a little narcissistic jerk, and they make a point of making that point multiple times. Red Canary is interesting. She's despite being inexperienced, her and Damien develop some rapport, and she holds her own against the shadow demons. And ultimately, there's some pretty cool visuals here with Dr. Light powering up, and with the help of Power Girl, basically manages to shun the darkness out of Justice League Incarnate. So Justice League Incarnate is returned to normal by the end of the issue. But then again, for reasons, apparently she was unable to defeat the entire Dark Army because it didn't make any sense because they were within the within the orrery of worlds, and somehow for some reason she couldn't defeat all the Dark Army, so the Dark Army is still out there. So I don't know. In any event, I'm trying to get the most important thing to get out of this, quite frankly, because the narrative is wonky at best. There is a comment made by Dr. Multiverse where Dr. Multiverse can see multiple iterations. She can see all the iterations of anybody she looks at throughout the multiverse. When she looks at Damien, she says to Damien that you have a uniquely consistent path ahead of you, Damien. It's not relevant to the task at hand. Of course it's not. So let's go and save all of time and space. So it's very interesting. When she says that Damien has a uniquely consistent path, what the hell does that mean? It would suggest that all iterations of Damian Wayne throughout the multiverse might be uniquely consistent, meaning perhaps they're the same, perhaps Damian has the same destiny in all his iterations across the multiverse. Or maybe it means something else. I'd be interested to hear your point of view or other people's comments on that. But that to me is really the biggest thing to come out of this, because as from a plot perspective, this is wonky as hell, and you could easily see why there's three writers on this, because this is like trying to put lipstick on a pig of a plot line that is just not making a lot of sense. But visuals were okay. I didn't mind the visuals, but very, very disappointed with who the heroes were chosen in this issue and who the villains were. Just a massive disappointment all around. What do you think?
Yeah, it wasn't a massive disappointment for me, but it was disjointed. And again, you can understand why, because again, three different writers, two different artists. I like the Freddie Williams art. I like the Jack Herbert art. I don't like it together. Give me just one person doing it, either one, and I will enjoy it. But yeah, I agree with you. The most important thing to come out of this is this idea that the original Monitor created Dr. Light as his ultimate weapon against the shadow demons. And it is cool that we had shadow demons back then. Interesting that Pariah is actually the big bad. We were led to believe that he wasn't. Now we know that he is, and obviously he's tied into the First Crisis so much. We do see when the Justice League Incarnate shows up here that they do have those chains that we were talking about. And I guess I think if we went back, if we go back to previous issues of Dark Crisis, we'll probably see that Deathstroke and a lot of his Secret Society of villains, supervillains, probably are wearing the chains as well. It just wasn't necessarily called out. But I do like this idea, getting back to the idea of the Monitor having created Dr. Light as his ultimate weapon against the shadow demons, against whomever. And apparently she just never leveled up enough. We do know that the Monitor in the First Crisis did have to sacrifice himself maybe earlier than he initially thought that he was going to have to give the heroes a chance to defeat the anti-Monitor. So I love that Joshua Williamson is keeping those things in mind, and he's tied it in really well. Now, I don't think that Wolfman and Perez back in the day, or not Wolfman and well, yeah, I guess Marv Wolfman was a co-writer on it, and Perez did a lot of the drawing. I don't know how much he had to do with the plot, but regardless, I don't know that they were conscious of that. I think the version of Dr. Light we got was kind of their fully realized idea of what the character was going to be. but Joshua Williamson using this idea that she never really got to her full potential, and now she has. I think that's a really cool idea, and by far and away the most interesting thing that comes out of this. As far as the Justice League Incarnate being trapped and all that thing, I mean, it kind of works. I also like the scene where Doctor Multiverse sees all the different um, possible futures for these characters, and then when she sees Damian, she sees kind of the same version. How she talks about how consistent it is, as opposed to others who have all sorts of different looks of what their future might be like. So again, there's a lot of moments in this I like. The problem that arises is the inconsistency of the art, the inconsistency of the scripting and the dialogue just doesn't work that well. And anything in terms of plot problems, I'm not going to specifically point to this issue with specific plot problems. The plot problems that exist here are a manifestation of the bigger plot problems of the whole event overall. So I'm not going to lay that at the feet of Waid and Culver and whoever that third somebody who went Delilah Dawson. I don't know who that is. But the last thing that I'll say about it is, Damian is back to his smart alecky ways here, and giving orders to every other person on the team is older than him, yet he's the one giving the orders. And I get it; it's his mission. He kind of understands what's going on, but he's such a jerk about it. I wanted Power Girl to just turn to him at one point and just flick him, and just watch him go flying, knocked out cold for the rest of the issue, and then the heroes can do what they need to do, because that's what he deserves, right? Like, Power Girl's so far above him in terms of power level and ability, and at some point you just want to put the kid in his place, and if it were really going to go off the rails in some kind of parody or whatever, she'd flick him and his head would just fly off of his body and he would be dead. You don't talk to me like that, kid. Like, obviously she's not going to do that. She's Power Girl, but he kind of deserves to get a beat down with the way that he's talking. This is the version of Damian that I thought he was evolved past, because this is the version of Damian that I can't stand. The know-it-all, the smart aleck, the condescension. Like, I don't like it. So ultimately, with one shot to go, and then one issue of Dark Crisis to go, it's really hard to see how this event redeems itself. We have Dark Crisis Warzone, and then it all concludes in Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths #7. And I really think, unfortunately, that my first impressions after reading the first issue of Dark Crisis, my fears, my worries, have all sort of come to fruition, and it's too bad. Like, ultimately, this, in my mind, this event may go down as a failure in my mind. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't lead to good things, and we talked about that over the weekend when we talked about Dawn of DC, and hopefully some of the things that come out of this event will set DC up in a positive light going forward. But this has been a bit problematic of a series. So, all right, let's move on. Up next, we have Batman Fortress #7, written by Gary Whitta. Art is by Darick Robertson. Colors by Diego Rodriguez. Letters by Simon Boland. So when we finished reading the last issue, it was a bit of a cliffhanger. We saw Batman was crossing the giant chasm, and the rope broke. Almost anticlimactic in a way. What happens is Emiko shoots him with an arrow, goes through his shoulder. They pull him up. He doesn't fall. And then subsequent pages, they go through other traps, and they manage to make it into the central area of the Fortress of Solitude. And that's when Batman and Luthor start bickering again, with Luthor using the computer system, for lack of a better term, inside the Fortress of Solitude to play a message from Jor-El to Kal-El. And in the message, Jor-El talks a little bit about kind of the mistakes that Krypton made as a society, mistakes perhaps in hindsight that the actual House of El made in terms of building weapons, and this Kryptonian belief that they were so much better than everybody else, and in that way they weren't trying to expand the Kryptonian way of life as conquerors, but more just in their mind they were bettering. They would go out, they would explore, they would better the other worlds that they came across because they had such advanced technology. But you can go back and forth, and there's hints in this version of the DC universe that the reason that Krypton exploded possibly might have had to do, and the reason they weren't able to evacuate Krypton might have had to do with the enemies that Krypton created with this kind of expansionist idea and expansionist culture that they had. And Luthor hears all this, and he immediately focuses on the House of El made weapons. They're warmongers, they're fascists. Superman's here under a big lie. He knew this all along, and he spins it the way Luthor would spin it, and he's a total scumbag in this, and that leads to him and Batman bickering back and forth. All the while, Dale's trying to get their attention, going, "Hey guys, hey guys, hey guys." He finally does get their attention. Last page reveal: the reason Batman hasn't been able to find Superman on the surface of the Earth is Superman is not on the surface of the Earth. He's under the water. He's there in the fortress in some sort of cocoon or coffin or something. And that's where this particular issue ends. So I really enjoyed it. Didn't have as many humorous moments. Probably the best moment was when they go in, they get past the room with the chasm. They go into the next room. The walls where the doors slide shut and the whole thing starts filling up with water, and they really think they're going to die. That's it. They don't have any way to get out. Batman's had nothing in his utility belt. Lex Luthor's super suit has no power. It's burnt out. Amico doesn't have any superpowers, and Arrow's not going to do anything against those walls. And so at the moment when they think it's pretty much going to be the end, Luthor says to Batman, I know we've had our differences, and you've gone after me, and I've gone after you, but I just want to take this opportunity, since it might be the last time we ever get to say anything to each other, is that I really hate you. And Batman's like, "Oh, I hate you too." That was a great moment, because who doesn't hate Lex Luthor? He's completely deserving of it. But yeah, I feel like this one was really fast paced, and there was a lot packed into the issue, and it probably didn't leave a lot of moments for those little humorous bits. But I'm still really, really, really enjoying this series. The Darick Robertson art is fantastic, and can't wait to find out what's going on with Superman. Why is he in this coffin, in this cocoon, and can he turn the tide against these aliens? So I thought it was really great. What'd you think?
I've been trying to get this series started off with such a bang. I love the first issue. First issue is still my favorite, with that alien attack, and it was just an adrenaline rush. And then with the Justice League taking off the playing field, I'm still, the jury is still out for me. Well, I think it's too late. I'm not really a big fan of this team, to be honest. I don't think, but yet, uh, I mean, I will give some credit to the scripting, because I mean it does have some humorous moments. This is a very different kind of Lex Luthor, but still the arrogant prick of Lex Luthor. Not a particularly not as an intelligent a Lex Luthor as we're accustomed to. Batman is clearly the smartest person on this team. Um, I will say Jackson Hyde in this issue really stepped up to the plate. He sort of grew on me. I really didn't like how he first appeared. I thought it was a wasted issue with him. We wasted 10 pages on him basically swimming in the ocean and talking to his boyfriend. I didn't, didn't serve the narrative. But I don't, this is very weird. I mean, we got a president of the United States, Lex Luthor. We got a Bruce Wayne who's demonstrably different, but yet cockier, yet doesn't even mind using lethal force. He saw Emiko use it a couple issues ago. Then we got this Dale, this squirrel chipmunk Green Lantern. This is a very odd team, and yet oddly enough, it kind of works. But yet the jury is still kind of out on this for me. It's really going to appear to me, how is he going to nail the landing on this? Because this is unquestionably the strangest team up of the year. This is the strangest team formation. Like, all the members of this team, I would never have guessed that Gary Whitta would have chosen these members to be on on the same team together. So it's interesting. I wish this issue was a little bit more exciting, but then you're right, it does have its moments with Jackson Hyde, with Lex Luthor, with Batman. There's a sense of desperation here. There's a sense of they got nothing to lose. The Earth's in danger. They got to find Superman, and they do. And what the hell is Superman doing in that coffin? I don't know, but damn it, I'm curious. So, again, I've got some mixed feelings here, but I'm in this for the long haul. So we'll see. Sorry, you're on mute. You're on mute there, Jace.
I couldn't unmute for some reason. Yeah, I was gonna say, a really great cliffhanger. Not one of those cliffhangers like last time, where Batman's falling into the abyss or whatever. It's like, oh my god, what? But a different style. Like, really heightens the mystery. Like, why is he there? What is going on?
Yeah.
Maybe he's supercharging himself so he can take on the aliens. I guess we'll find out next issue.
Yeah.
Up next we have Human Target number 9, written by Tom King, art by Greg Smallwood, letters by Clayton Cowles. I gotta say, before we talk about the issue in particular, I wasn't a big fan of the covers this time. Like, this issue has had such fantastic covers the whole time. Um, I don't know. None of them really stood out to me as like, oh my god, I have to have that. The Greg Smallwood cover probably my favorite of the three, or the one I like the most, and it's very appropriate, like the way he laid things out based on what happens in the issue. Um, but yeah, I was a little disappointed because I normally look forward to these covers, but yeah, they didn't really do it for me this time. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the issue and/or covers?
It's funny you mentioned the covers. I was disappointed with the covers as well. I, I felt that they just weren't as good, or at least, I mean, it's the Greg Smallwood main cover. It's it's obviously Greg Smallwood's art, and it's not bad, but it's just not my favorite. But then, Greg Smallwood, it's his own damn fault. He's raised the bar so high. He's been giving us just amazing covers, amazing interior art. I mean, so usually it's been an A plus, and so this goes down to like a B plus. But in any event, it's the art in this issue is still amazing. I I love it. There's the quiet moments that continue to impress me here. I can just sit there. I mean, there's so many. What I have to give Tom King credit for, he very rightly knows when to not say a damn thing, to not script any dialogue, and let Greg Smallwood's art just speak for itself, with Ice waking up in bed with her head on the chest of Christopher Chase, and she panics because he's not waking up. He doesn't seem to have a pulse. She panics, and she ends up, taking him to Dr. Midnight, and they revive him. And that's when Ice finds out for the first time that Christopher Chance is actually dying. And he only was given 12 days to live, and he's got 4 days left. And now the bulk of the issue is it's exposition heavy, narrated again with the voice of Christopher Chance, sort of talking about he's Christopher Chance is nervous throughout this issue. Him and Ice are driving into the desert, and there's no clear destination in mind, but it's clear that Christopher Chance is looking over his shoulder all the time. He's worried that he's going to be found. They're going to be found. They're going to be found. And there's a lot of dialogue, great dialogue again, but not a lot of movement of the story. But again, I'm forgiving of it in the sense that I've become accustomed to this. This is probably we've had one other issue where there's been some extra added pages here where I think this narrative has been dragged out, but it works. I will say that it does work in the sense that, they're driving through the desert. He thinks he's being followed, and he because Christopher Chance is convinced that the heroes are looking for him because they're going to find out what happened. That he can't believe that we find out that Christopher Chance is the one that set up the fake signal saying that Guy Gardner was in space. And we've been up until this point, we're believing that Guy Gardner, of course, was killed by ice. Ice froze him, and he fell into 1,000 icicles. He was dead, and they covered up his death. and it was Christopher Chance that did that by creating a false signal of Guy Gardner in space. So Christopher Chance is convinced he's going to be caught. They're going to be caught, and he's nervous, and he's got 4 days left to live. He just wants to get away with ice, and they end up going to a diner. He confronts somebody at the diner, thinking that the person at the diner is maybe Martian Manhunter in disguise, looking for him or something like
Bruce
this,
Wayne, I think he
or
thinks it's Batman.
well, or somebody in disguise. Or but clearly
Yeah,
finds out.
the whole issue it's Batman that he's worried about. That's why the cover has a shadow of the Batman over him.
Yeah, the guy doesn't really have the posture of the Batman, but at the end he tells Ice that Batman is smarter than him, because she asks him, who's smarter than you? Well, Batman's smarter than me. I mean, Batman's smarter than anyone. But major revelation at the end here. Major revelation at the end. As it turns out, we it it turns out that in fact, Guy Gardner, that he's surprised that Batman hasn't shown up, and his only conclusion is that Batman isn't looking for him, because Batman must be smarter than even he thought Batman was. He gave him credit for, because Batman must have figured out that Guy Gardner is in fact still alive. So that's the big revelation here. Guy Gardner is still alive. Did Christopher Chance set up the death of Guy Gardner? Guy Gardner isn't really dead. Christopher Chance has always known that Guy Gardner didn't really die. Did Ice? I mean, Ice seemed to kill him. What's Christopher Chance doing? Christopher Chance will often sacrifice himself. He's the human target. It's Christopher Chance that usually takes the bullet for someone and dies in order to find out who the killer is. But in this respect, did he set up Guy? Did he set up Guy Gardner to be the one to die, so that he can see maybe if somebody else is the killer who killed him? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Is Ice now a suspect? Does Ice? I mean, she killed Guy Gardner. She must. But does she know that Guy Gardner's still alive? I'm wondering. Is she a suspect now? I'm curious as to your thoughts, Chase, in terms of how you saw this revelation.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I didn't take it as Christopher Chance realizing that I think he's believed all this time that Guy Gardner was really dead. And I want to make it clear. So the signal didn't come from space, but it came from some other dimension, right? Because Rocket Red looked for Guy Gardner's energy signal leaving the planet, couldn't find it. So, the way they explain that away, yeah, he just traveled, directly from Earth to another dimension. So, um, yeah, I don't think that Christopher Chance knows how Guy Gardner is still alive. So that remains to be seen. But I thought that the issue, I mean, you're right about it having a different feel. There's a paranoia to Christopher Chance, right from the start. He thinks Batman's after him. And I caught that right away, like just what he's saying, because he always refers to it as he. I got to get away. I got to get somewhere, in the middle of nowhere so I can see him coming. And just the things that Christopher Chance ascribes to Batman. Like, he's one step ahead of me. He confronts the guy in the diner because he thinks it's Bruce Wayne in disguise, and he realizes when he punches him out that it wasn't Bruce Wayne, and then he thinks, oh, because he knew he put that guy here, because then he knew. He gives Batman so much credit. He gives Batman credit for not being one step ahead of him, or 2 steps, or 3 steps, but 17 steps ahead of him. He gives so much credit to Batman that he's so far ahead of anything else that would be even possible. And then in the end, he ends up saying, well, yeah, Batman probably heard the signal, knew it was fake, and was like, God, what are those idiots that I used to run around with in the Justice League International doing? Because Guy's not even dead. So what's with all this nonsense? It's all beneath me. But I really actually enjoy, as much as the issue is so different, it has a different feel, and is a little tougher to read than a lot of the other issues that have come out. I give the creative team a lot of credit because it's so purposeful, and it all goes back. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know right there in that front cover, the main front cover, where the shadow of Batman is falling over Christopher Chance. Because this entire time, even with the threat of death hanging over him, only 12 days left to live, Christopher Chance has been, no pun intended, as cool as a cucumber. He's never lost his cool, and that's what Batman does to you, right?
Yeah.
Is he's so smart. He's so many steps ahead of even Christopher Chance, and even Ice is like, well, who's smart? Who's smarter than you? Nobody could be figuring this out. No one's smarter than you. Oh, Batman's smarter than me. And her response like, oh shit, you're right. So, yeah, I thought this was a great issue. I thought the feel and the tone of it were handled really, really well. So 3 issues to go. And I imagine Guy Gardner's going to be showing back up, which, as you said, is a big surprise. And the art by Greg Smallwood is sublime as it has been throughout. So, okay, up next, Punchline: The Gotham Game #2. This is written by Tini Howard and Blake Howard. Gleb Melnikoff and Will Robson are the artists. Luis Guerrero on colors. Justin Birch does the letters. All I'm going to say about this is I didn't really care for it. I'm not a fan of Punchline, and as more of this series has unfolded, I'm still not a fan of Punchline. I just, this was tough for me to read. I have zero interest in this character or this book. It's just not doing anything for me. So maybe you had a better experience. What do you think?
Well, I do think that this is, uh, so far, this is this is the best Punchline video that, pardon me, video. This is the best Punchline comic that's come out yet, where Punchline has actually been in the comic. I haven't really enjoyed her stories so far. Her original, the Punchline backup in the Joker series was absolutely terrible, which led to her getting away with murder. It was terribly written, lacked any degree of verisimilitude on every metric. I thought it was absolute. I just thought it was terrible, straight up, and I wasn't a big fan of artistically of it as well. This, at least with this series so far, what writers Tini Howard and her husband, is it Brian Howard? What's the B stand for?
Blake.
Blake Howard, Tina and Blake Howard. I think they're doing a decent job here. And I firmly put this, because it's Punchline. I can say it, that phrase. I've used it already today. Lipstick on a pig, because Punchline as a character. I mean, you got it. They got to write this character better. It's a slight improvement here. Punchline wants to basically take over Ace Chemical. She needs a headquarters and she already has taken over or has made a deal with the Royal Flush Gang. And if I have one criticism of Punchline, she's still in my mind. Number one, she doesn't deserve. You can she doesn't deserve all these covers. Somebody should tell DC editorial that Punchline is not Harley Quinn. She doesn't deserve one, two, three, four, five, six covers, really. And there might be more than that, because we do not always get every cover on these preview copies. But this is ridiculous. I mean, in any event, she's got to earn her pay grade, you know. And the fact now that here she is, she's basically almost essentially taken over the Royal Flush Gang, although the Royal Flush Gang is under the impression that they're kind of equals. We've gotten the Royal Flush Gang in the original series, where Cullen's boyfriend, and Cullen is the brother of Harper Row, who's Bluebird. Cullen's boyfriend is Bluff, and Bluff is what you do during a card game, and the Royal Flush Gang is all about cards, and Bluff's boyfriend is Cullen. Cullen is the brother of Harper Row. In any event, Bluff joins Ante, like when you ante up. Bluff and Ante are in this comic, but they're taken out by Batman, because what's happening here is Punchline is trying to take over Ace Chemicals, which is in Iko Hasagawa's territory, and Iko is in the pages of Catwoman. She was, for a while there, Catwoman's sidekick, and she's Catwoman when Selena Kyle's out of town. And so, but Batman wants to take out Punchline because he's had enough of her. And I think one of the very much needed conversations that takes place in this comic takes place. There's a conversation where I'm going to try to find it here. It's frustrating. It's bear with me. It's Bruce Wayne talking to Nightwing about Punchline, and finally somebody describes Punchline in somewhat of a meaningful way to readers. And Bruce Wayne specifically distinguishes Punchline from Harley Quinn, and it's very interesting. Uh, uh, he says Dr. Quinzel, Harley fell victim to direct manipulation. It may have taken her time, but Harley managed to shake herself free of the emotional depredations of the Joker. But Alexis K, whose Punchline is different. She is the direct result of the Joker's effect on Gotham. She's a young woman who has lived her entire life under the threat of people like him. She's the Punchline to his setup. I thought that was very interesting. She's a woman molded by nihilism, pervasive dread, and their perceived cheapness of human life. Now, you can interpret that however you like, but I like that there's at least some attempt on that. I actually disagree with his interpretation of Harley Quinn, but this is very clearly Batman, very clearly in this new iteration or in this way of thinking, Batman actually thinks that Harley was a victim of direct manipulation. I disagree with that. I don't believe that Harley. I think Harley wasn't simply manipulated by the Joker. I think Harley, I would rather have our Harley have more agency and be, frankly, have her choice to choose to be more, frankly, more evil and more dark. But again, maybe I'm an outlier on that, but I like the darker Harley. But I digress. I like the fact that we're getting a dichotomy. We're getting a description, a difference between Punchline and Harley. So in that respect, this is very important, that that observation by Bruce Wayne. We now know why Batman clearly chooses Harley over Punchline, and that's the distinction. What doesn't make sense here is Punchline takes the Royal Flush Gang, and there's this gang war between Aiko Hasegawa and the Royal Flush Gang and Punchline, and Batman shows up, and Punchline can actually she ends up taking out Batman with one of these creatures that she has, and it's I'm not even sure what the hell this creature is. It's a beta prototype villain of some kind. Takes out Batman with some sort of laser, really odd. But in any event, Punchline is fighting Iso Hasegawa on the roof of Ace Chemicals, and she's saying that this is about property and she's taken over the territory, and this makes no sense. I mean, even if Punchline defeats Eco and she ends up stabbing Eco and Batman ends up saving Eco and what have you, but the reality is Punchline can't stay in the building. Batman knows where your headquarters is. So you've actually lost. You've done something totally stupid and you're on Batman's radar. Punchline here is clearly trying to fight outside her pay grade here, and I don't see this ending well for Punchline. And not only do I not see it ending well for Punchline, but I hope this is intentional on the part of Tini and Blake Howard, because Punchline should absolutely not get away with this. If this series ends with Punchline anywhere other than jail, I'm going to be upset. At some point, she's got to pay her dues. I mean, good God, even the Joker spends a lot of time in Arkham for a reason. He gets defeated. It's not going to be believable if, at the second, third, fourth kick at the cat, Punchline doesn't get some comeuppance here. She's tried, she's failed epically. She's got the attention of Batman. It just doesn't fly that Punchline is this effective here. But I like the story because Punchline is making mistakes. She's narcissistic. She thinks her shit doesn't stink. She thinks she can do no wrong. She thinks that she can stab whoever she wants, and she's Eco could take her out, but she's distracted. She's murderous. Batman has witnessed her stab Eco. Plus, as Batman warns Punchline at the end, Punchline, you don't have to just worry about me now. When Catwoman finds out that you stabbed her ex-lover, good Lord, you're on our radar now. Do you really think you're going to get away with this? So at the end of this, what am I left with? I actually like this. I think this is interesting. I still think Punchline is punching out, she's punching above her pay grade, so to speak. But I kind of like it because I'll like it even more if she fails, because this shows this is a woman who is bound and determined. She's a narcissistic asshole and she's going for it. She's class A bitch, and she doesn't care. She is nihilism and chaos, as Bruce Wayne described her, and I kind of like it, and I'm slowly starting to like Punchline just a little bit more now, finally. So, what about you?
Yeah, I can't stand her. So I agree with you. interesting take on a kind of her origin, or the way Batman views her origin. You know, what she's come from. She's a product of Gotham, so I guess I can kind of see that. And the only other thing I have to add is, if Harley, Punchline has been created as sort of a sidekick for the Joker, or originally was, because Harley had gone from Joker sidekick to villain to anti-hero to hero. So they wanted to replace her, and Punchline is nothing like Harley, and that's purposeful from James Tynion. But if Harley can defeat the Trinity or fight them to a standstill or stalemate, like we mentioned earlier, then why can't Punchline outsmart Batman? Come on, man! It's not just for Harley to be super formidable. But no, I agree with you 100%. I mean, just like I say all the time with the Joker, if Batman were real and the Joker were real, it would take Batman all of 30 seconds to beat the Joker with one punch and lock him up and throw away the key, and that would be the end of the Joker forever. And it's maybe even less time to take out Punchline. So she's a terrible character. Can't stand her. Not changing my mind anytime soon. Dig a hole, drop her in, bury her, and have her never appear in the pages of comics ever again. All right. Up next, we have Action Comics number 1049. Kal-El Returns, Chapter 5, The Fight Ahead. Written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Mike Perkins, colors by Lee Luffridge, letters by Dave Sharp. There's a couple fantastic covers. Steve Beach does the main. Then we have Mario Fox Focelli and Prasad Rad. And then there's a Nathan Zerdy cover that's probably my favorite of the three. With I'm assuming that's Lois, even though her hair looks kind of light colored, looking out at this rocket flying over the sky.
Gorgeous cover. I love that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Anyway, what'd you think of this?
It's not bad. It's not bad. I already know that this new era of Superman, I really don't think it's going to be for me. And I say that with great respect, but I really am not interested in a Superman family. This issue, this was, let me just get some high compliments here. The art, I really like the art. It's full compliments on the art. The artist is Mike Perkins, Philip Kennedy Johnson, the writer. It's, there's some good development here of Lex Luthor talking to John Corbin again. I think we're building up a precariously, obviously a strongly, highly volatile, highly conflictual relationship between Lex Luthor manipulating John Corbin, who is Metallo, and then we get right into the battle of between Superman and Orion and Calabac, as Orion and Calabac are fighting because the power of Orgum is within one of the orphan children coming out of the Warworld saga, and that's all well and good. And there's I love Orion here, the anger between them and Orion and basically ultimately Calabac and Orion leave, and they'll, because they really have no choice because Superman isn't going to let him take the child, and whose name I forget because it has frankly just has a stupid name, and uh, I'm just bored. I really don't. I don't care. I don't want him to have orphan children. I don't want him and Lois to care for these kids. I'm just not interested in that at all. I don't want them to be additions to the Superman family. I don't recognize the Superman family at all. And I'm really not looking forward to tales of a Superman family that, frankly, I don't recognize. There was no reason to expand it like this in my mind. And that's me being old school, though. I don't want to be a negative Nelly because I am set in my ways a little bit. I'm in my 50s, and maybe we need to expand the Superman family for a new generation of comic readers, and that's all well and good. I'm not feeling this. I guess it's because I was a late bloomer as a father. I want Lois and Clark and a young John Kent. I still miss that. I hate to belabor the point, but I miss that. And I just don't want a Superman family like that. The higher points in this issue, Superman goes to Warworld, he frees all the people, he sends them back, and he sends all the people back to their home planet saying, my family and I will never abandon you. The free peoples of Warworld and the House of El now share a bond that few could understand. And this is still in many ways an ending to Warworld. It's Superman is finishing what he started, and Um, yeah, and then at the end we have Manchester Black being under the control of Lex Luthor, and that's interesting. I'm not sure. We're still not sure what the heck Lex Luthor is up to, but it involves Manchester Black, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. But uh, it'll be interesting moving forward. But I don't I don't know. I love the Warworld saga, but I really was hoping that it was going to be more of a return to a status quo. What I really want some Lois and Clark stories. I don't want a bunch of science fiction. I don't want. I want some more grounded Clark Kent, Lois Lane, just more character driven tales. And this is I don't think that's where we're headed. Not that stories can't be great, but I feel like want a little bit of a break. I like a lot of high plot action, and then give me some grounded in character, a push and pull factor there. So and the backup was meh too. I'm not interested in the backup and the more follow from War World anymore, to be honest. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I almost wonder, is this Osel Ra? Is that DC's answer to, well, we're sorry we aged up John Kent. That ship has sailed. We can't de-age him now because, it's just too far down the path with Tom Taylor's, best-selling Son of Kal-El title, whatever. So we'll give you another Kryptonian that was around that same age
Yeah,
who's kind of a pseudo son. It's
no,
not the same.
no,
It doesn't work. DC,
not
you
at all.
can't just replace. And also, can we get Otho Ra and Osel Ra some regular names, just like Kal-El got Clark? Can we get them some names that we can actually remember? Because I can never remember what the heck these kids' names are. So at least kudos to Kennedy Johnson. He probably knows that. And it's why every time Clark talks to one of them, he calls them by their full name. Um, so yeah, let's get some regular names for these kids, and maybe I'll
Yeah,
probably forget those two, to be honest, but at least I might have a better chance of remembering. But I agree with a lot of what you said. Like I didn't like the War World story, so like I'm ready to put it behind me, and yet we still have remnants. We have these two siblings, one of them with the fires of Orgum. We have War World still orbiting, although supposedly it's leaving now. But then we still have the backup story, where even though um, Theola and Supergirl defeat whatever his name, I can't remember, Chattel Ironblade or whatever the heck his name is. They defeat him, but then at the end, these mysterious characters materialize in his cell and take him away, and it says "not the end." So it's like, God, can it be the end, please? I mean, the idea that this guy that is missing an arm and two legs is in any way, shape, or form
yeah.
a
He's a
match
gimp.
for Superman. Yeah, I mean, come on, man. Like it's just it doesn't work.
Yeah,
And again, we've given Kennedy Johnson a lot of praise, and rightfully so, for his world building. But here's the thing about Superman: the world's already built. He doesn't need all this additive stuff. There's enough there already. Go back and reuse some of the classic Superman villains. Like, when's the last time we had a good Toyman story?
yeah,
Or Terra Man, or there's any number of stories you can tell. Adding this new stuff, it's not interesting and it feels derivative, and I'm ready to move on. I agree with you about the Mike Perkins art. Mike Perkins art is really outstanding. Um, but yeah, this was a bit of a disappointment. The other thing that I didn't care for is the story structure, right? Like we get Metallo Luthor in the beginning, and that's I've never been a really anybody who felt any sort of sympathy for John Corbett, but I do in the hands of Kennedy Johnson with the way he's having Luthor manipulate him. Like Corbett was like, I'm done. I'm done fighting Superman. I'm done getting my butt kicked. And Luthor doesn't leave him any outs. Um, and so that might be the most interesting aspect of the story. So we go from that to the battle at the zoo with Superman and the New Gods, and then from there we go to Superman on Warworld, like Rocky said, and then it comes full circle with back on Metallo. Um, well, and then we have Luthor as well with Manchester Black. But here's the thing: it's like everything was like, okay, here's this part of the story, and then here's this part of the story, and here's this part. I prefer it when it bounces back and forth. Like one page is this part, another page is that part. As long as it's it still makes sense. Um, I mean, that's kind of like, think of it when you watch like a TV show. It's they don't show, okay, here's this entire two characters part of the show, and then you go to commercial break, and then you come back, it's two different characters. Here's their entire part of the show. Like it goes back and forth between different. So this just felt so compartmentalized. Like, okay, Metallo needs to show up, check. Okay, Superman needs to show up, check. Okay, Luthor needs to show up, check. Yeah, it didn't flow at all. So I'm with you, man. I'm ready for a different feel from Superman. I don't know that we're gonna get that. I mean, it was supposedly a whole new era starting in a few more issues. It's 1051. I think it's the big kickoff in January. We'll still have a Kennedy Johnson story, but we'll have a Dan Jurgens story that focuses on Superman and Lois. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also really looking forward to the Power Girl story that we're going to get from um, Leah Williams. So and then Joshua Williamson on the Superman title. I guess we'll see. But yeah, this is just okay. Parts of it I like, mostly the Metallo. Which if you told me, okay, you're going to get an Action Comics and it's Metallo's going to be my favorite part. Yeah, I'm really surprised by that. So. Anyway, there's a few other books that we didn't talk about. Batman, Scooby-Doo Season 2. The Batman, and Scooby-Doo Mystery Season 2. Number 2, if I can get that title out, is out this week. Also, Young Justice Targets number 5. And I think there was one more. Oh, Batman the Audio Adventures number 3 is also out this week. And then there's some hardcovers. Superman and the Authority trade paperback, or I should say collected editions. They're actually all trade paperbacks. Superman and the Authority trade paperback. Batman Black and White box set trade paperback. And then this one gets my highest possible recommendation. This is the cheapest way you can get the entire story, and it is 100% worth your time. It's only $19.99. I think there were 5 issues total, and each of those were $7.99 or $8.99 when they came out. So this is much cheaper, and you can get the entire collected edition of the other History of the DC Universe from John Ridley. Giuseppe Camuncoli handles most of the art, and it is an exceptional read, award-winning, not Eisner's, but it won Comic Source Awards because I gave it the award for I think for best one limited series
Did you
that
say it's
finished
only
up.
20? Did you say it's only 19.99?
Yeah,
Wow,
1999.
that's a hell of
Yeah,
a deal. That's a hell of
yeah,
a deal.
100%. It's a hell of a deal.
Yep.
Again, it's not a hardcover, but that's 256 pages, which is the entire 5-issue series. For $20. I mean that's fantastic. So if
I'll
you
be
haven't
picking
read
that
it,
up.
heard about it,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely pick it up. So, all right, well that's gonna do it for this episode. Want to give our picks of the week? I think I can
Uh,
guess what yours is.
yeah. Well, let me see. My pick of the week, I'm gonna have to go with DC vampires, DCV vampires, which is maybe a little bit of. I thought this was a very mediocre week, to be honest with you, but I got to go with DCV vampires because I got the most enjoyment out of reading that, and the rest were fairly meh. Close second would have been the finale of Deathstroke. Origins, but DCV Vampires, I just love the action in it, so I would go to DCV Vampires. What about yourself?
Uh yeah. I mean, not the easiest week to pick. I mean, last week was so easy to pick, with Flash standing head and shoulders above the rest. So, Batman Fortress pretty good. Detective Comics not bad. DC Mech impressed me, but it only had upwards to go. But I'm gonna go with Human Target because I was really impressed with kind of the feel of paranoia that Tom King and Greg Smallwood were able to instill in that story. So I'm going to go with
Interesting.
that. Well, in the U.S., it's a sort of a holiday week, a half week here with Thanksgiving on Thursday. We still have tons of content if you're driving in the car, traveling. First of all, be safe, but we're gonna have tons of content. Interview with Dan Panosian, his AWA series that was recently announced, Black Tape. That interview will be coming up later this week. I'll probably drop it on Wednesday afternoon. Then obviously our regular DC or our regular New Comics Wednesday episode should be out as well. And if you guys aren't familiar with what's going on with Dawn of DC, definitely go back over the weekend. Rocky and I got together and chatted about the 9 titles have been announced already, and speculated on what those titles might be like, as well as what the overall future of the DC might hold. So, anything else you have to tease, Rock?
No, I think I'm tied up for the rest of the week. I might do some my own indie reviews. I know Jim and I we missed this week for our indie reviews, but there's a couple that we won't be reviewing together. I might review a couple, but beyond that, I've got a pretty busy week at work. So yeah, we'll see.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to Rocky's channel on YouTube, Comic Boom, exclamation point, Comic Space Boom, exclamation point. Ring the notification bell, leave comments, subscribe so you don't miss any content. We really appreciate it. And you can find the Comic Source audio only content wherever you get your podcast, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the interviews or episodes. So that's going to do it for this one. We appreciate you guys joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.